The ocean's surface erupted into fire. Thick black fuel oil spread outward in a widening stain, then ignited, sending flames and smoke high enough to be seen from every escort ship in the formation. To the crews watching from the decks, the conclusion was immediate and unquestioned. A submarine had been hit. The oil was burning. The kill was complete. Orders reflected that certainty. Lookouts relaxed. Weapons crews stood down. No depth charges were prepared. The sea itself appeared to confirm the outcome, churning and blazing as if sealing the wreck below in a final, violent marker of success. But beneath the fire, the submarine was still there. Damaged and powerless, it rested just below the burning slick, its hull suspended in darkness while heat shimmered above. Engines were silent, instruments were dimmed. Every man aboard understood the danger. The flames that convinced the enemy had destroyed them were also poisoning the air inside the boat. Smoke seeped downward, oxygen thinned, carbon dioxide rose with every breath. The surface told one story. The water below told another. Enemy ships lingered only briefly, circling the fire long enough to confirm what they believed they were seeing. Fuel oil meant rupture, fire meant destruction. There was no reason to risk men or munitions on a target that was already gone. One by one, the ships turned away, leaving the flames to burn themselves out. Below, the crew did not move. They waited, counting breaths instead of minutes, knowing that survival depended on remaining exactly where they were. What looked like annihilation had become concealment, and fire, the oldest weapon at sea, had turned into camouflage. Keep watching to see how this illusion held, how close it came to killing everyone aboard, and why no depth charges ever followed the flames. In submarine warfare, damage was rarely ambiguous. A boat that leaked fuel oil announced its position as clearly as a flare. Oil on the surface told escorts that a hull had been breached, tanks ruptured, and internal systems compromised. If that oil ignited, the interpretation hardened into certainty. Fire meant exposure to air, uncontrolled leakage, and catastrophic failure. Commanders were trained to read these signs quickly and act accordingly. Anti-submarine doctrine reflected this logic. Depth charges were valuable and limited. Once destruction appeared visually confirmed, especially by burning fuel, crews were instructed to conserve weapons and avoid unnecessary risk. Dropping charges through a burning slick was dangerous to surface ships and offered little perceived benefit. Sonar performance was also degraded by surface chaos. Heat distortion, turbulence, and noise from crackling fires complicated returns, making confirmation beneath the flames unreliable and, in practice, unnecessary. Submarines themselves were poorly suited to survive after such damage. Fuel leaks reduced endurance. Fires above often meant toxic gases below. With engines disabled or restricted, maneuvering options collapsed. Standard procedure in these situations favored either an immediate escape attempt or acceptance of loss. Remaining directly beneath a known surface marker ran counter to training and instinct. This context explains why the pursuers behaved as they did. They were not careless or unskilled. They were following established patterns shaped by dozens of prior encounters. The sea had taught them that burning oil ended stories. What they did not account for was a situation where destruction was visible, convincing, and yet incomplete, creating a rare gap between appearance and reality that no rulebook addressed. Inside the submarine, the realization came slowly, not as inspiration but as deduction. The initial shock of the hit had passed. Systems were assessed in near darkness. Fuel tanks were compromised, and oil was escaping freely. Above them, the sound changed. Instead of propellers closing in and the metallic thump of depth charges being set, there was shouting, movement, and then something else entirely. Heat. A dull, spreading warmth pressing down through the water. Reports from the control room confirmed what no one wanted to believe. The leaking fuel had ignited on the surface. At first, the fire was seen as the final threat. Burning oil meant smoke and fumes would be pulled downward. Oxygen would be consumed faster. The boat could not outrun the danger. But as minutes passed, something unexpected happened. The escorts did not attack. Sonar pings became irregular, then stopped. Engines above shifted tone, moving from pursuit to observation. That change forced a dangerous thought. The fire was not drawing them in. It was pushing them back. The officers understood the implication immediately. Burning oil meant rupture. Fire meant confirmation. To the enemy, the submarine was already dead. Dropping depth charges into a burning slick made no tactical sense and posed real risk to surface ships. The fire distorted sound, masked vibration, and created a visual endpoint to the engagement. A decision followed that defied instinct. Engines were shut down completely. The submarine was trimmed to neutral buoyancy and allowed to drift directly beneath the flames. No attempt was made to escape. Survival now depended on staying exactly where logic said they should not be. Stay with us to see how this choice turned minutes into hours and how close the fire came to finishing what the enemy never tried. Silence became absolute. With the engines stopped, even the familiar vibration of the hull faded, replaced by the faint creak of metal cooling and heating unevenly as flames raged above. The submarine held its depth by careful ballast control alone, drifting with the slow movement of the water rather than forcing its way through it. Any unnecessary motion was forbidden. Even voices were reduced to whispers, not out of fear of detection, but out of discipline. The air changed first. Smoke particles and fumes seeped downward, invisible but unmistakable. Breathing became shallow and deliberate. Carbon dioxide levels climbed steadily, dulling thought and slowing reaction. Men sat or lay where they were, conserving energy. Some were ordered to remain still because movement increased oxygen consumption. Others were watched closely for signs of panic or confusion, which could spread faster than fire in a sealed hull. Above them, the surface chaos did its work. The burning slick crackled and roared, masking any residual sound from below. Heat shimmered across the water, distorting sightlines and making precise observation impossible. Escort ships circled once more, then widened their pattern. From their perspective, nothing remained to be done. The evidence was already burning. Time lost its meaning beneath the flames. Minutes stretched, then hours. Several crew members collapsed as oxygen thinned and toxins accumulated. They were dragged clear of walkways and monitored as best as possible. The submarine remained motionless throughout, trusting the current, the fire, and the enemy's certainty to hold. No depth charges fell. No final confirmation was sought. The trick succeeded not through action, but through restraint, as the submarine endured the most dangerous part of the escape without moving at all. The fire did not end suddenly. It thinned, broke apart, and finally lost its grip on the surface as the last of the fuel burned away. Above the submarine, smoke drifted and dispersed, leaving only darkened water and scattered debris. By the time the flames died completely, the escort ships were already gone. Their patrol patterns had widened, then vanished over the horizon. In their logs, the engagement was finished. A submarine had been destroyed. No further action was required. Below, survival came at a cost. The air inside the boat was barely breathable. Several crew members were unconscious, their bodies starved of oxygen and overwhelmed by fumes. When the submarine finally dared to rise, it did so slowly, testing the surface for signs of return. Fresh air flooded in through opened hatches, and medical triage began immediately. Some men recovered within minutes. Others carried the effects for far longer. The submarine escaped damaged but intact, officially listed by the enemy as lost. The illusion had worked perfectly, but only just. Incidents like this remind us how thin the margin can be between destruction and survival, and if stories like this matter to you, take a moment to like and subscribe so you do not miss the next one. Watch how this escape exposed a deeper truth about warfare, where belief often determines action more than certainty ever could. The escape succeeded not because it was planned, but because it exploited expectation. Burning fuel oil had long been treated as the final punctuation mark in submarine warfare. It signaled rupture, loss of control, and inevitable destruction. Commanders trusted that signal because, in almost every other case, it was correct. What made this incident extraordinary was not the fire itself, but the pause it created. The enemy stopped asking questions once the surface appeared to provide an answer. This was never a tactic that could be repeated safely. Remaining beneath a burning slick was as likely to kill a crew as to save it. Oxygen loss, toxic fumes, and psychological strain pushed the limits of human endurance. One miscalculation, one delayed departure by the enemy, or one stray depth charge would have ended the story differently. For that reason, the incident remained an anomaly rather than a lesson to be codified. Yet it reveals something enduring about conflict. Technology and weapons matter, but interpretation matters just as much. War is shaped by what people believe they are seeing. In this case, Fire wrote a story the enemy accepted without question, and the submarine survived by allowing that story to stand. Sometimes survival depends not on proving you are still there, but on letting others believe you are already gone.